Hello everybody, my name is Hlongwane, and in this video I just want to put a bit of focus unpacking the left spectrum. As it stands, the left, or parties that identify themselves as leaning to the left, are the majority in South Africa. If you look at the parliamentary makeup of the parliamentary seats, parties that would consider themselves left make up quite the majority. In fact, depending on cooperation in terms of how they can come together, but these parties could easily form a two-third majority, which means that they can start amending points in the constitution and completely rework the constitution. From a parliamentary level, they would have the power to be able to do so. These are parties like the African National Congress, which hold the highest number of seats in parliament overall. Big contribution towards the left agenda. You've got the MK Party, you've got Economic Freedom Fighters, you've got parties like ATM, UAT, Al Jamaa, PAC. I might have forgot some. So really, what is my concern when it comes to the left? So reason number one, so the ideas of the guys on the left, they mean one thing to them, but in practice and what it actually means to their own supporters is completely different, right? The perfect example is what they often speak about, that they're going to expropriate the land, they're going to take it without compensation, they don't give a damn whether you like it or not. They make a lot of those statements. They want to take ownership of the means of production. They want state-owned banks. They just want state. No one ever asked the question, what would happen to you and I? Simple scenario in South Africa, right? About 70% of employed tax-paying citizens, mainly who most of them make up the middle class, are employed in the private sector to some extent, right? Employed in the private sector, these are professionals, right, who are middle class and upper. What would happen? What would happen to you and I if they reach or achieve what they are saying that they want to achieve? Moletin Begi made a very good point. He was speaking at some event and he was addressing people about, these issues around South Africa. The whole argument about farmers came up, expropriation came up, and he made a very simple point that, well, the problem is if you get rid of, the white farmer, which is what the left is so strong about, you would have an issue with food supply. You would have an issue with food supply because a lot of these farms are feeding the nation, right? And you don't want a situation where you're having to import every single thing that you have to put in your mouth, fruits, vegetables, meat. It can get really expensive, especially on the consumer. So he made the point that there would be a hunger issue. And very simple reason to understand why this keeps coming up, that if you get rid of farmers, there will be hunger problems. One, most of us are just not in that element of trying to make our own food. We're not trying to grow our own food. We're just not strong at that. Of course, there are people who are passionate, who are not necessarily white, and that's good for them. I think it's great. The more the merrier. But in the main, right, they're just certain things where you have to accept things for what they are. People are just better, stronger at certain things. Just as Nazi as the black population, we're better, stronger in our own things. Those guys are just better and just stronger at farming. So the left wing says, they will go, we will take. What happens to you and I? Another problem with the left is this idea of undermining human nature. Because the left, if you look at the manifestos, if you look at their messaging, they are selling the idea that people just don't need to worry about anything because government is going to provide solutions. Government is going to do this, government is going to do that. You've got a problem, government. The most sort of consistent way that government does this is through welfare, through social grants. In South Africa, particularly if you take the 350 social grant that was introduced during COVID to assist people because of the lockdowns and so forth, this has since been carried on. And, I was watching another video the other day, someone saying that whenever government says we're introducing something and it's going to be temporary, it's going to be for a short while, just know that it's there to stay, because all of these things are leverage for them, right? So they realize, okay, 350 is really keeping a bit of a calm storm in terms of, young people who are unemployed, who are still looking for jobs. Maybe there's just a bit of like positive sentiment coming, and then 1 year, extending it to 2 years, 3 years extension, 4 years extension. Now we're sitting with 6 years since this grant was introduced, and it's still in place. But the question I have when it comes to this 350 social grant is that now they say government is going to provide a transformation fund, right, which is going to support local businesses, give black businesses an upper hand. The likelihood that someone who is getting the 350 social grant is going to also benefit from the transformation fund. In fact, the likelihood that someone who's getting the 350 social grant is going to even put their hand up to get any benefit from the transformation fund is low, right? It's low. You think about the profile of someone who's receiving the 350 grant. Think about the profile of someone who's receiving support to be able to take care of their children. That is not the same person that would also start a business, have a business plan, and. The profile is not the same. And it just speaks to one thing that I find very problematic with welfare, especially if welfare is something that is so prominent, that it also just deals with the psyche of the person, right? Knowing that the government will take care of things. I mean, people are just way too relaxed, way too passive, and they just don't have the fighting spirit because they know that, somehow I'll get help. I'll get housing, I'll get this, and I'll get that. My child will get this. My child being able to attend school without me having to pay, and which all of those benefits are great because at least people can still get something. But the psyche of welfare, the psychology of welfare, I do believe that it undermines the human desire and the instinct to survive, to think critically, to be a problem solver. Hence, the person who benefits from these grants that the government consistently puts in the face of their voter base, because these are the people that support them, will just not be the same person who benefits from the transformation fund, which you would likely want people to benefit from that because that means you are able to start a business and make your own money. So that becomes another problem when it comes to undermining human nature. And it's also just really problematic because the 350 grant, especially if you look at that one in particular, and I know Finance Minister Hlongwane has raised the fact that it is just unsustainable to continue funding this particular service that the government offers to people because the South Africa tax-paying pool is not growing. Which I think on this point brings me to another concept in economics that often comes up whenever you listen to economists speak, which is called the Laffer Curve, right? This is, let me just get my extract here. The Laffer Curve is basically a theory that is built on two extremes, just to kind of bring it home. One is to say that if the tax rate is 0%, the tax revenue or the money that the government will be getting from tax is then zero. So if the government doesn't tax, they don't get any revenue from tax, right? Then there's another extreme where if the tax rate gets to, let's say, 100%, which would probably be the highest or the limit the highest that you can go, no one will work and the tax revenue would also be zero. So two extremes, which is essentially what the Laffer Curve represents. And then in the Laffer Curve, you've got extreme 1, extreme 2. What you really want is a situation where you get to a sweet spot where you're still able to tax citizens enough for the government to make enough money to do what it needs to do, right? To fix roads, to fix clinics, to pay nurses, to pay doctors. Oh, please, we need more doctors in the public healthcare scene. So you want to tax people enough to be able to do that, but don't tax them so high that people just either one, don't work, don't feel encouraged to work. You don't want to discourage them. It discourages people from wanting to be productive because remember, tax is you essentially taking away their money. Third point, the left creates an environment that is one, high risk, low reward environment, right? And this applies when you think about foreign direct investment. This also applies to local investment, people that are in that country who want to be able to start something for themselves. Again, high risk, low reward environment, right? And how does this play out? One, crazy laws, like what we're seeing with the ANC now, pushing and just pushing and pushing and pushing. Hence, we've been seeing all of these debates about the Employment Equity Act, expropriation, Bella Bill, all of these things. That is all creating a high-risk environment. No one wants to touch you, right? Low reward, right? How does this play out? Government threatening to expropriate. Government becoming hostile, saying if you do not do this, we're going to tax your ass. We're going to tax you more. You hear this coming a lot from the EFF, for example. The one time, the one lady, I was watching the TV, there she comes and says, no, we need to introduce something called the apartheid tax. We need to tax people for the atrocities of the past. Hey, all of that builds what we call a high-risk, low-reward environment. And you ask yourself, what happens in a high-risk, low-reward environment? Well, it's very simple. It's just uninvestable. No one is willing to invest, foreign, local. You don't have any entrepreneurship, whether it's small business, medium, massive size. All of that just becomes a complete strain. No one really wants to participate in the economy if you've got high risk and low reward. The current taxpayer, for example, would also be completely burdened, which means the government will not get enough revenue to be able to meet all these other things. Low GDP, economy would collapse, services would also collapse along with the economy, because for services to be rendered, the government needs money to collect waste, to pay government employees and all of that, right? And just to paint a picture of South Africa's scenario, when we talk about the left, it's not necessarily speaking to all of these moral, emotional arguments that they try to make to manipulate people. We need to talk about the facts of this issue. South Africa currently now is sitting in a situation where if you're in the middle class, it is said that your tax rate, the tax rate is up to 67%, which means whatever you are earning, the government is costing you up to 67%. A portion of that 67% is your income tax rate. Let's say your income tax is at 20-something%, right? You ask yourself, okay, cool, what about the other 40%? Where is that coming from? How is that now a cost that is, essentially a tax to your income? We are subsidizing what the government is not able to provide in so many areas. The key ones would be schooling, right? A lot of people are taking their children to private schools, to independent schools, because, we want a good future for our children. We're not trying to deal with all of the other drama and all of that, right? That is an additional cost that you pay. When you take your child to a public school, for example, you probably pay 80% less than what you're currently paying per annum at the schools that we are choosing for our children, from as young as when the child is 2 years old, right? If you know this, if you know, the costs are really high. So that's coming out of your income, which is subsidizing for government failing to put you at confidence that they can provide good and quality education. Healthcare. Another thing that we've normalized, that we have private healthcare, right? I speak against the NHI because I don't trust that the government can handle it. I think if the NHI was being managed by anyone else but the government, I'd probably be pro, because we are going to spend less if we go with this NHI fund. But of course, the government being involved, count me out. But as it stands, a lot of people are paying for private healthcare, not realizing that paying for private healthcare is, again, subsidizing for the fact that people just don't want to take the risk when it comes to their health. You know what I mean? They're not trying to fuck around and find out, in terms of what would happen if you don't have medical cover, something goes wrong, you break a leg, you break an ankle. If something as minor as that could end up being a whole situation, right? So we're subsidizing, hence we're paying these premiums every single month towards healthcare. Security, we're subsidizing for the government in a major way. Most people live in apartments, complexes, not because it's ideal, not because they want to live there, but they just don't want to deal with a lot of things. They don't want to have to worry about who's jumping the fence, who's passing the street, who's not supposed to be in the neighborhood and all of that. Yes, there are some brave soldiers who live in freestanding houses in South Africa, but most people just don't feel comfortable. Again, you're subsidizing for the government. You pay levies to the estate, for example. That levy goes towards the security, the upkeep, the gardening and all of that. So if you look at all of these costs that are coming out from this one income that each household gets, it makes sense to say up to 67% of what you could be earning back in your pocket is going, a lot of it is going to subsidizing. I will say that what we need to do is that we need to shift the pendulum from the left to either center or right in terms of politics in South Africa. We just don't have a choice. We don't have another choice. Because if you're thinking that, okay, cool, the guys on the left are going to maybe wake up and say, yeah, actually, unemployment is quite high. People are really, really, really in need of jobs. Maybe we just need to be a bit more easy with the private sector. Maybe let's be less hostile to the private sector. You're wrong. They're never going to do that. They're not going to change. The African National Congress is not going to change. Julius Malema is not going to change his ideology, his point of view. Jacob Zuma is not going to change. He's got one way of looking at things, and that is that, right? For them, it's the revolution, communism, whatever, right? And that's that. Now, we are the ones that need to really look at this differently. And I know I put quite a lot, and just think about it. Take what I've said. Hey, I'm just an ordinary person. Take what I've said, think about it, and apply it to real life scenarios, because, you know, fiction is one thing, but real life is another. Like, real life tells a whole different picture, right? And I often speak about these things in my channel. But yeah, we have to be the ones that change. We have to be the ones that put democracy in action. We need to be the ones that participate in politics. Go out, we vote, get others, we come together, we vote, we put this guy in. He doesn't make he doesn't do the right thing, we get another one in. Or coalitions, putting a lot of people in one batch who are not all coming from the left. Let's start strengthening the guys that are speaking right, the guys that are more centrist in terms of their political ideology. Let's give them the power so that when we sit in parliament, there's a balance. You do not have a near almost two-third majority number of political parties that are all thinking with the left perspective. That is not a good deal for you and I. Okay guys, I'm going to leave it at that for this video. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you got this far, thank you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Where do you stand? Like, how do you feel? Do you look at the left and say, yeah, I think we should be fine? Or do you look at the left and just also think, nope, this is not good? You know, are you also concerned? Do you believe that the left is good? Do you support the left and all of that? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let's get the conversation going. And also, if you've noticed on the YouTube channel, you can then now show your support by either joining to become a member to this channel or to just give thanks. No strings attached if you found this message to be helpful. But for now, I would also appreciate it if you subscribe. That is free. Like the video. That is also completely free. If you found this video to be valuable. But yeah, thanks for spending time with me. I look forward to seeing you again next week when I drop a new video.